Hi everyone, I'm the Rum.
And I'm the Wine.
We're an expat couple living here in Dublin, Ireland for the past 4 years now. We make videos on this channel about what it's like living in Ireland, advice for people moving to Ireland, and how to adapt and live great lives as expats here. If any of that sounds interesting, please do subscribe, and let's get on with today's video. So this week, we're back again with Nerdy with Numbers. That's not the actual title, but what happened before we went on our little holiday to West Cork and Kerry. We were looking at some information from the Statistics Office here in Ireland, and they had a report about immigration, and we were wondering, what can this report tell us about the type of people that are moving to Ireland, and what, if you're a person who are thinking about moving to Ireland, to know if you're in that bracket of people who will most likely be able to come here a bit more easily than others and live a good life.
So we also like looking at these numbers because we like geography, we like human geography, and data is kind of what I do for my day job. So it's like not that weird for me to be looking at numbers and trying to understand what like the actual stories that are being told by the numbers. So we looked at the total population of Ireland, which is now just about 23,000 people away from reaching the 5 million mark, which is still not nearly anywhere close to what the population used to be in the past. So you're probably in history class, I assume you've heard mentioned the word the Great Irish Potato Famine, stuff like that, and the population before that was actually 8.2 million.
8.2 million.
So just to put it into perspective, that's about the population of Austria. That's close to the population of London. That is, if you compare it to the UK population today, that's like an eighth, it's hard to say for Austrians, an eighth of the UK population. And now we're only just getting close to the 5 million mark, which is already an increase in population from what it used to be before. But if you compare it internationally, Ireland is about, in population-wise, around the same area as New Zealand, but still smaller than countries like Norway or Costa Rica or Singapore, for example.
Yeah, so the crazy thing about the Great Potato Famine, or the Great Famine, is that the population really sad to think about, through like mass death, starvation, and of course the mass immigration that happened, dropped to these levels. So right now we're kind of living in numbers of population that hasn't been seen since the 19th century. That's quite a bit a while ago. So, number one, Ireland is growing once again, and we're happy for that. But say you're an Irish person looking to return to Ireland, or a student or someone looking for work and all that sort of stuff. What is the population of Ireland looking like right now? What are you going to come and encounter? So, I'm not as good as with numbers or remembering stuff, so excuse as I look at my phone here for the numbers. So basically, of the population here in Ireland, around 87% are Irish. Non-Irish population, most of the non-Irish population is actually European. Yes, this comes from obviously the UK. They have a little decent sized chunk of the population. But this is also including what the stats call the EU14, which is pretty much the countries in the, Austria included, the people who were, the countries who were there in the EU before 2004. Because in 2004, a lot of the more Eastern European countries joined the bloc.
It was like the biggest expansion of the EU at a time, I think. It was like, if you're old enough to remember, or if you're European enough to have seen it on the news, you probably remember it was like huge ceremonies and a huge deal that the EU was growing, like instead of just like one country at a time, it was like just massive growth, like a lot more countries joining. So that is, I didn't know that was a distinction that some people make, but apparently they did.
Yeah, and distinction indeed, because people from those countries, that's like Poland, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, they make up 6% of the population. And the rest of the world, this is including like Americas, US, Canada, Latin America, Asia, Africa, they make up 4%. So, of course, we know the countries they're coming from, but who exactly is coming from these countries? Well, obviously enough, it's mostly your working age people. That's between, your 20s and 40s. The interesting thing is that from the stats, people over 45, once you're around that age, you don't really migrate, so there's a very small percentage of people over 40 who are migrating to Ireland. The other interesting thing is that their educational attainment. It's a huge number of about 74% who already have their bachelor's or higher degrees. The remaining about 18.7%, I can bet that a good chunk of that as well is people who have come into Ireland to actually do their undergrad or, so.
Also, just judging by people who message us, a lot of whom are thinking of either doing a bachelor's here, or some also actually thinking about doing a master's here.
So the other interesting thing is that the cohort of people who are leaving is the exact same. Makes sense, because if you've come here and you've got your work experience and your education, etc., that makes it much easier for you to go off and get other opportunities as well. And for people from, the EU, etc., it was quite as simple as, their expectations haven't been met living here, so they move back home, probably some economic conditions, or be close to family, or simply, hey, they had enough of living in another country and just want to return home.
So these are just the stats up until 2019, I believe.
Yeah, just a year kind of chunk there. It's not the actual census.
Yeah, so what we're actually curious about is how 2020, since 2020 is kind of changing everything, will also change the trends in those numbers, like with Brexit, that no one wants to talk about upon us, wondering maybe that changes to also have more people move over from the UK here, whether they're British nationals or from other European or generally other countries that were living in the UK and would prefer to stay in a EU country. If the pandemic also has shifts to if there are more maybe people who are originally from Ireland wanting to return home, or with more options of remote working, maybe people would decide to, I don't know, you know what, I've always wanted to live in the Irish countryside, now I can because I'm working remotely, and maybe that's a new trend, who knows. So we're quite curious about that as well. Another section about the whole, not exactly related to immigration, but one question we get asked a lot is about statistics regarding jobs. And we thought it kind of fits into this topic because I think a lot of people who'd come here come for jobs that are very much in demand, because that's usually how it goes. If there's a country with a big demand for jobs, you usually can't fill that with the talent pool from your own country, so you need to get more people in. So there are stats that are sort of comparing, they're quite old stats. So the data I found from the Central Office for Statistics is comparing 2011 data with 2016 data to try and see if there are any trends. So 2016 sometimes can feel like a world ago, especially with the whole 2020 situation going on and feeling like everything is changing, but sort of usually trends tend to continue on to some degree. So I'll still list a few jobs where there have been a lot of increases, so there have been more jobs available in those areas, and where there have been decreases, because I think that still tells you, it gives you an idea of what the general job market situation in Ireland looks like. So with the increasing ones, we have computer programming, consultancy, information service activities, all that kind of stuff. Pretty well known, especially in Dublin. All the big tech companies are here, and then companies sort of piggybacking off of those things and having their consultancies. Then there's residential care and social work activities, and that probably with COVID has only increased. Like, I think every country is desperately looking for more care workers at the moment. Then restaurant and mobile food service activities. This one will be interesting to see how COVID affects that. Unfortunately, restaurants and pubs and cafes have been hit pretty hard by the restrictions as well, and it's been quite tough. So we'll see how that trend continues, unfortunately. Then there's also the construction of buildings. Yeah,
that seems to be cranes all on the skyline, so...
And they're still moving, so it's not like they stopped. Like, we're not real estate experts or anything, but the one thing we do hear every time we read up on housing in Ireland is that there's just not enough housing, and during the boom, a lot of housing was being built. They had a lot of people who knew exactly about all the different parts of construction, and then the recession happened, the real estate bubble crashed, and a lot of people with the knowledge in the construction industry left, and since then they've been also kind of struggling finding enough people who know all to do the tiny bits and pieces that go into building a house, all the technical things and stuff.
We don't know these, so, you know.
But yeah, I can see that continuing to grow. And the other one is medical and dental instruments and supplies. Again, I think probably not suffering under pandemic. If anything, the pandemic probably taught a lot of countries that if something like this happens, it is useful to have medical supplies companies in your own country. So the sections that have been declining from 2011 to 2016, so could probably also be declining since then, is retail sale in non-specialized stores with food, beverages or tobacco. I presume that basically means like supermarkets and stuff. I kind of can see that because with the pandemic we've seen a lot more delivery trucks. We've used delivery ourselves sometimes when we were self-isolating, so that does make sense that would continue to fall. Then there's also farming. I guess it makes sense. Like I see the same thing in Austria, that like once the generation switch over, that the next generation would have to take over the farm. A lot of people my age don't, and kind of the industry kind of dies out. Then taxi operation, public administration, and surprisingly financial services, but that doesn't include insurance and pension funding. So the financial services were actually declining. We'll see because people keep saying with Brexit, a lot of the more finance companies will also try and move in the EU. We'll see, maybe that brings a trend to Ireland as well. I have no idea because I'm not in the finance sector. But those are just the general stats of the past. Of course, 2020 could change everything. It's not a picture of what the situation is like now. So let us know maybe if you're in one of those industries, what's your perspective of the 2020 situation in them. So if you enjoy random fun facts about Ireland, or generally videos about what it's like living in Ireland, do make sure to subscribe, like the video, share it if you have other data nerd friends or people who might be interested, and also check out our past videos where we have a lot of information about moving to Ireland. And our course, we also have a course about how to move to Ireland if you want it all like quick and concisely.
Yeah, a bunch of links and descriptions, everything you need there. And until the next video, bis später.
Bye!